Wrexham are cooking up in the transfer market and they are building themselves a championship super team, and we are just at the very beginning of that. They've just been on their tour down under, they've got back and they've already made like 3 transfers since coming back, maybe even 4. These guys are on absolute fire in the transfer window so far, and they're going to continue it come the end of the transfer window, and they are going to have a team that is completely different to the team that got them promoted in League One. And the question is, how far can they go in the Championship this season? If you're a Wrexham fan, do hit subscribe on this channel. If you're a Championship fan, hit subscribe on this channel. We do daily Championship content, so if you're a fan of any team in the Championship, drop me a subscription. And do drop a like as well if you do go on to enjoy the video. So what better way is there to start off by talking about it with Wrexham's Down Under tour, where they went to Australia and they didn't have the best results there. Of course, pre-season results don't really matter. But I said it in a few videos, I think Wrexham were really going for kind of exposure. They were going for the commercial side of things, obviously going to Australia, and that was their main focus. It wasn't really transfers, which, as I said, I've been vocal on this. I feel like Wrexham put a lot of focus into that pre-season tour and not enough focus into the kind of Championship transfer window. But now they're back, and I feel like they are making up for lost time at this point. And as I say, in the pre-season friendlies, they didn't exactly go their way, the 2 games against Sydney FC and Wellington Phoenix, especially the game against Wellington Phoenix, where apparently they had a team full of kids, basically, Wellington Phoenix did, and Wrexham had a strong-ish team out there. They'd have quite a few first-team players out there, and they lost that game 1-0. Now, of course, going back to last season with Wrexham, if we just have a look at the League One table last season, we know Wrexham, of course, went ahead and finished second to Birmingham City, where it was against the odds, let's be real. A lot of people obviously thought they'd get promoted straight out of the National League, then to League Two. They thought they'd get the back-to-back, but in terms of last season, I really think they kind of exceeded expectations. I don't think they were ever expecting to be right up there for the automatic promotion race. We saw them obviously strengthen in January, but as I say, at the start of the season, I don't think they had dreams of really reaching the Championship this season. I think they probably had plans to kind of consolidate in League One and then push on this season, but they're a season ahead of where they probably should be with that promotion. Of course, taking advantage of some teams in the Championship, some teams in League One not performing to expectations. You know, you had Bolton that had disappointing seasons, Huddersfield, Blackpool normally up there, Barnsley as well. You had a lot of teams there that you'd expect to be in and around the playoffs, if not even pushing automatic promotion, which obviously disappointed last season in League One and even fell short of playoffs in the end. So they had a huge opportunity with those teams faltering. Of course, them going up with Stockport. Both of those teams had a great opportunity, and it was Wrexham who took home the automatic promotion on 92 points. And you have to say, over the course of the season, they deserved it. Defensively, you know, the second best team to Birmingham, and their defensive numbers were incredible as well. Not just their goals conceded, you know, the XG and everything against them, and a clean sheet record. You know, it was so impressive from Wrexham last season, which, as I say, I don't think many people expect them to go and get the back-to-back promotions, but they've gone ahead and done it, and then they think, a lot of people are obviously going to predict Wrexham now to be really struggling, because I think that team in League One, if we just go to, you know, one of their games in League One from last season, it's evident that the squad needs work. That's picking out a 3-0 win against Charlton, who of course are a promotion team. But you look at the team, you know, they've got a lot of players that have played in the Championship before. You look at, you know, Matty James, you've got Jay Rodriguez, James McLean, then you've got some other players as well where they've played at Championship level. And then the question is, can they make that step back up? Because you got James McLean, who's obviously getting on now, Matty James, same, Jay Rodriguez. And then these players are now making the step up to the Championship as well. Now, will these players be able to make the step up? I'm sure they will. I'm sure they'll be able to compete in Championship level. Jay Rodriguez, I'm not so sure on. But the others, I think, will be fine in terms of competing. But this team, realistically, you look at this team, it's relegation in the Championship. I think it's a big step up from Championship to League One. Even though you can make the argument that both seasons now, in the last 2 seasons, every single team that's got promoted from League One has stayed up in the Championship. And I do think we've got a great chance of that happening again. But I'm looking at that team there. If it's this team, I think that team's getting relegated. But then we know Wrexham are, of course, going to go ahead and splash the cash in the transfer market. And that's what they've gone ahead and done. As I say, at the start of the window, I feel like they weren't really doing all too much. Now, the first 2 signings that they announced were Ryan Hardy, which I think is a great piece of business, just speaking on him first. Both seasons at Plymouth in the last 2 in the Championship, over double-figure goals, 13 goals and 12 goals in all competitions, which is very decent numbers. You're signing a striker there that obviously can compete at Championship level and is very established now as a Championship striker. You'd have to say Ryan Hardy is another striker that Wrexham have signed. I know the amount of strikers they have and the amount of strikers they've signed is pretty crazy, to be honest. But Ryan Hardy, very decent striker in my opinion at Championship level, really did perform in the second half of the season under Miran Muslic, and I think he'll be absolutely fine in terms of settling into that Wrexham team, and I think he will, chip in with goals. So I was actually really impressed with that first signing that Wrexham did make. The next signing they made was Danny Ward, which I've spoken about a bit. I'm not a big fan of that. I think he should be a backup keeper. If he's on decent wages, then it's fine. Do you know what I mean? If he's coming in as a backup and he's on alright, he's on low wages. Obviously on Leicester he was on big wages, but if he's on a wage that's a decent for championship, a championship backup keeper, then fair enough. Then he should be okay as a backup. As a starting keeper, there's no way they've been going into it with Danny Ward. Now there's also Josh Windass, which is also in these transfers as well. I think there's another one as well. They brought in another player from League One. Just trying to think. We'll get it up in a bit. But they've also broke their record transfer on this man here, who it says he can play attacking midfield. I'm pretty sure they brought him in as a left back. He played for Empoli over in the Serie A and played a lot of games for Empoli as well. So this guy's obviously very well established. And obviously, I don't really know anything about him at all. He started 24 games last season for Empoli in the Serie A. Got 2 goals, 4 assists. I'd imagine, from what I'm seeing, I think he's a left back, unless Wrexham are going to be bringing him in as a full back. But it says here you can play attacking midfielder. So Wrexham fans, let me know where you think this guy's going to play. 24 years old. Again, Wrexham are kind of changing their model. They've been very well known for bringing in has-beens, pretty much players from higher divisions that are big names that can obviously, it kind of just gets people talking about Wrexham again, which has worked for them so far. But they seems to have kind of changed their approach going into the Championship, I think it's fair to say. So this guy, 24 years old, can play left back, can play attacking midfield, apparently. We'll see where he kind of fits in. It's at Wrexham side. And he was the record transfer. But I think they have actually broken it again, right, with Lewis O'Brien just a few days later. And for me, this is the pick of the bunch in terms of Wrexham signing. You look at the effect that he had on that Swansea team when he came in last season on loan. Gutting for Swansea, to not pick him back up. He was so impressive there. And he's a player that's been very good at Championship level for years. You go back to his days at Huddersfield, when they got to the playoff final that season. He was so impressive in that side. Obviously, then went on to Nottingham Forest, who beat them in the playoffs. Played 13 games in the Premier League. Couldn't really find his way into that Nottingham Forest team consistently. And with the amount of signings that Forest made, it was always going to be difficult for him to establish himself as a Premier League player week in, week out. Went out on loan to DC United. Seemed like he did well there. Middlesbrough was out on loan to as well. Did okay. And he did very well in Swansea, especially in the last season, in my opinion. I think he did really well in that back end of the season, especially under Sheehan, the new manager. And Swansea were really good towards the end of the season, and Lewis O'Brien was a big part in that. As well, he's spent a couple of years in America, actually. He spent at Los Angeles and as well as at DC United. But I think this is a really, really good transfer from Wrexham. 26 years old, and this is an opportunity now for him to kind of nail down a spot at a Championship club without being out on loan. And I think this is the perfect place for Lewis O'Brien. So it's a transfer that, it's not a big name transfer, but it's a smart transfer from Wrexham. And I think for me, that's their signing of the window so far. But then they also brought in another fantastic piece. Another fantastic signing. I think any Championship team would have taken him. Windass is a player, ever since he became available, Championship clubs were queuing up for him. He's a player that obviously scored a lot of goals last season in the Championship. He scored 50 goals for Sheffield Wednesday over the course of a spell when he was there permanently. And as I say, on a free transfer, any Championship club would be taking Josh Windass on a free transfer. And Wrexham were the team that got him. Of course, he had interest from, I think Norwich were after him. I think Coventry maybe, or I might be wrong with that. But a lot of Championship clubs, let's be real, were all after Josh Windass. And Wrexham managing to get him. It feels like a Wrexham signing. This is the one where I feel like it feels like a Wrexham signing the most. Josh Windass is a big character. He's got a lot of podcasts. He's spoken a lot. He's a very vocal player. And it does make sense for him to end up going to Wrexham. And as I say, these kind of signings, you see O'Brien signing, you see Windass signing. Those are signings where you're like, they are going to be fine in the Championship this season, because these are players that are established Championship players and very good Championship players. As I say, I think top-end Championship clubs will be taking Josh Windass on a free transfer anyway. A lot of Championship clubs will be taking him. Of course, if you're buying him, it's another question. But on a free transfer, most clubs in the Championship are taking him. And that record speaks for itself last season. 13 goals, 5 assists. And actually, an interesting fact, if you look at this, I know Josh Sargent is still at Norwich because he actually rejected the team in Germany that he was going to sign for. But if you actually have a look and you go back to last season, Josh Windass, in terms of... Oh, what have I done here then? Josh Windass, in terms of stats, is absolutely right up there in terms of goals scored, right? So Joel Prue isn't in the division. Borja Sanz isn't in the division. Josh Brownhill isn't in the division. Josh Sargent is, but I think he'll end up leaving. The next best, Josh Windass, 13 goals. So they're technically signing from last season. The player might still be in the Championship come game week 1. The top scorer from last season who's still there, which is Josh Windass and Tommy Conway. So they've signed Josh Windass. And that right there tells me that they're just not going to get relegated making a signing like that. And I knew this had another player from League One who didn't come up, and that's George Thomason, who has actually played a lot of games for Bolton in League One, has clearly proved himself as a very good League One player. 4 goals, 3 assists from the centre of the park. And now you're looking at Wrexham completely transforming their midfield from what I think needed work, definitely, to now having 2 players there. You've got Thomason, who's going to make the step up from League One, who's definitely ready with the stats that he's put up and kind of the performances he's put up in League One over the last couple of seasons especially, to then going up to the Championship with now a player like Lewis O'Brien, who knows the division inside out, and you've got Rathbone in there as well. You've got a midfield there that's been transformed completely and is now definitely ready for Championship football. So that is very exciting as a Wrexham fans. And as I say, they're still going to make more moves. I've seen that Phil Parkinson's been given like £10 million to sign a new striker. I don't know how true that is, but Wrexham might splash on another striker as well. And add that to it. I know they've got a lot of strikers already in the squad, but add a top striker if they are going to be splashing some cash. That is a serious team going into the Championship where I think they should have a really good chance of staying up. Now, how far and how high can they go? I don't think they're going to be getting anywhere near playoffs. I really don't think that'll be happening. I think Wrexham will take a comfortable season. They'll probably take survival at this point, honestly. They still need more signings, in my opinion. They're still going to make more signings because it's Wrexham. If they lose the first couple of games, they got Southampton game week 1. If they lose the first couple of games, they might just hit panic button and splash even more cash and just really throw some money at it to make sure they stay up in the Championship. But for me, I have no doubts that they'll stay up this season. Just with those kind of signings, Lewis O'Brien, Josh Windass, for me, has convinced me that Wrexham will be absolutely fine in terms of safety. And then I think they can push on to a mid-table finish. I just don't see getting playoffs. I think the teams in the Championship are just a completely different level. These top-end teams, and I think there will be 6 better teams in terms of Wrexham for the playoffs. But we'll see how they get on in terms of the rest of their signings. But as I say, I have no doubt they will be staying up in the Championship this season. So let me know if you're a Wrexham fan, how do you think you will get on this season, and what are your expectations going into the new season? I'd be very interested to get your thoughts. Drop a like if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel. If you've watched this point, you may as well hit that subscribe button. It'd be very greatly appreciated, and it only takes a second as well. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.